You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
My mic doesn't work today.
Yeah.
Like the bar is weird. It's in the wrong spot.
We're getting new mic stands.
Are we when?
At
We
some
gotta
point.
wait. I wonder if we like cross.
Yeah,
and
that's
use
not going to
each-
fuck us up.
Hold on. Do you see
No.
the pop?
We're not using each other's microphones.
But then it wouldn't be like. It would come at me at the angle that I
Show me
wanted
again.
it to.
Show me again what it's like.
No, because you're gonna make a reel out of it.
What would the microphone not be like then?
It's the thing that I did earlier.
By the way, we are in the middle of the episode now.
Right? See, that's
Before
why I'm
we
not
get
redoing
going,
it.
because we have a really good episode that we're going to do today, and we're excited
And
to
the
get
mic is
into it.
driving me crazy.
But I have something that I've just remembered
You
before
just
we started
remembered?
recording that I wanted to talk about on the podcast. So this is going to be a slight
feel like
rant,
this is a
and it's
setup.
kind of like inside baseball.
Yeah.
Right? You know, I love that term. Right? When it's a little insider baseball here for the podcast world. So if you're like consuming a lot of podcasts, or if you are somebody that produces podcasts, or if you have a podcast of your own, or anything of those things, right?
We're in that group.
We are in that group. We do apply. But I had this thought the other day,
Okay,
because
what is
obviously I
it?
listen to a lot of podcasts.
You do.
Right?
You're
It's
a
no surprise.
connoisseur.
And the vast majority of podcasts
Mm-hmm.
have ads.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And when we started this podcast, off and on over the past, 6 years, forever and a day that we've been doing it,
Mm-hmm.
we've had ads before, we've had sponsorships, we've had all sorts of different things. And now we no longer
Only
have,
ones that we cared about, though.
Correct.
Not just like any dime will do ya.
but we don't have any of those
We don't.
anymore. And
It's not that we
now-
don't care anymore. We just don't do this.
Well, I had a thought about it because, for example, you'll
Yeah,
have
what are your
really
thoughts?
successful podcasts,
Mhm.
right?
And they all get sponsored by Casper Mattress.
Well,
This
they-
is not.
They all have a ton of different sponsors, right? So
Apron.
they'll either do the sponsors at the beginning of the show, or they even do the
Middle. They
Right.
cut off and they're like, hey,
they'll
just to
break in the
remind
middle
you,
and then
you
give
need
some
a new
sort of
mattress.
sponsorship.
Right?
And I
Which
thought
is
about
great.
that. Hold on, let me get this out.
I realized. Okay, sorry.
That level of like commercialism,
Yeah.
and it's not, the commercialism isn't the right word, but like what is the big consumerism,
Yeah.
where we are programmed to constantly consume and buy and pay and consume and buy and pay, like over and over and over and over again,
Yeah.
right? Like it's the machine at work
Mhm.
that is really toxic, really negative, terrible, right? Because it keeps us in all of those unhealthy, not just coping mechanisms, but that concept and idea that somehow we need more, and this is what's going to make us happy. And so you get the idea when it
Yeah.
comes to like the whole consumerism issue in Western society, especially here in America and everything like that, right?
Consumerism is kind of a big deal out here.
It is a big deal, right? And you have a lot of people that talk about it
Yes.
from the perspective of like how terribly destructive it is,
Yeah.
and what it does to our mental health and our emotional health and all sorts of different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they push pause on their podcast to give you an ad for BetterHelp
Right.
or Casper Mattress or
Right.
any of the other thousands of companies that run sponsorship ads on podcasts. So there was like a mixed message that I felt in some of the ideology that, at least with the podcasts that I listen to. Some podcasts, obviously, they have no problem with
Right.
it being that whole consumerism kind of feeding into the man or into the machine of what's all secretly destroying our society.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought about it from the perspective of us and our podcast, and I'm like, I don't think I like that. I don't like the idea that, because that's the whole thing with podcasting too, is like one day when your podcast gets successful enough, then you will be able to run ads on your podcast and make millions of dollars from those ads.
It's like a status check too.
Yes.
Like, are you big enough for this?
Right?
I don't know. I keep going. I'm sorry. Keep going.
You're okay. That was kind of the thought.
That was kind of the thought.
And I'm like, and you don't have to have some big, million downloaded podcast in order to have ads. There's plenty of smaller podcasts and everything like that. And like we could have sponsored ads on this podcast.
Mm.
It's a feature that you can add to any podcast. So it's not something that is only reserved for those big podcasts. But
Do you have a blue check? Are you worthy?
I just thought about how it is like, I totally understand it from the perspective of, oh, it would be really nice to make money from those sponsored ads, right? And then at the same time, like, isn't there like, at what point do we say that machine, that system that's in place, capitalism and consumerism and everything else that is like really, really detrimental to the state of the world? Like, why do we want to participate in that?
I mean, I think you get to make that choice for you and decide if you want to participate in what level.
Right.
I mean, I feel like I have a different point of view than
Let's hear it.
Like, I can see, I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of like I float in the middle here, because on one hand, I don't like it, right? I don't like hearing the same ad over and over and over again for the product that, you know, yeah, I can get how much off of, you know, this product or that, whatever. It doesn't really bother me when it's like, sometimes I was like, oh, I've been wanting to try that, and here's this coupon code. I don't really see a problem with ads.
Okay.
I know, right? I'm a part of the problem, and I'm going to tell you why. I don't see a problem with it, but I have what makes it okay for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when people are trying to monetize their business, like, I understand that. When people are offering a service to other people, I understand that. When it's like, even though I don't align with, yeah, whatever, we'll like do an ad for whatever, whoever's going to pay us the most money, and we're just going to put it out there. Like, I don't align with that. That doesn't work for me, but I'm not saying that it's wrong for whoever it does align with. I don't like it. I don't think it's a healthy choice. And I think it can, like, I don't think that's good for your listeners when they're trusting you. In a sense, they're here with you on this journey, and for you just to, you know, but that's me. That's what feels okay for me, which is why I don't do that. And I don't know, there's this lady on the TikTok that I love saying that. I don't know why. It's just I have so much fun
happy.
when on the TikTok. It just, I feel like I hear the theme song from Weeds, and it just makes me happy. I was following her, and I was really like liking a lot of the information that she was giving. And
this was just an account on TikTok, right? She didn't have a podcast.
Oh, I don't know if she has a podcast or not, but I was watching her on TikTok.
Okay.
And she was talking about these supplements that she uses for this ailment or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. Because, you know, when you hear people talk about it, and she was honest, but also completely, like, I lost all trust in her. She lost, she was no longer a trusted person to me, because somebody asked about the supplement, and not the brand, but supplement for this thing. And she's like, oh, well, I have to like shout out or whatever this company, because it wouldn't be right if I didn't. And then said, I haven't tried their product yet. I'm going to start trying it, but if you want to try it, there's a link in my bio. I was like, you are promoting this to people who are coming to you as a resource for like health for their body, and finding these like immuno issues that are coming up, and like supplements to help. And you're like, I'm going to promote this for money, even though I have no idea anything about it. I haven't even tried it, but they said they would give me money for it if I pushed it. So here's a link, go buy it, get the discount so you can buy it. And I don't even know, like, you can't do that. So that, like, I'm totally judging that. I don't think that's a good thing. I think for me, what's going to align for me, and you get a say in this because it's our podcast, is I don't have a problem when it's like, I like things that actually help people, right? Things that we know are helpful, or things that whether it's helpful or not, we just really enjoy. And if it's like somebody that we know and it's good stuff and we're helping, I don't have a problem with it. I like it, but it's just, you know, that's my take.
No, you bring up a good point for sure.
But who knows?
Yeah, no, I don't know either. It was just something that sparked in my head the other day when I was driving. And rather than like really sit and flesh the thought out in my head, I was like, this is interesting. I want to talk about this on the podcast.
Right. Also, quit trying to make me buy everything.
Right?
Right.
And truthfully, it also stems from this place of like, seriously, if I have to listen to one more fucking ad on this podcast that I fast forward through because I don't even listen to it, then like that gets so, what's really frustrating too, like I'll tell you, like I listen to I listen to a bunch of different podcasts in regards to a bunch of different things at different times. And depending on what mood I'm in, I listen to X, Y, or Z, right? And there's a podcast that I listen to called Smartless, and it's hosted by Will Arnett, Jason Bateman, and Sean Hayes, right? So it's just funny. It's just a funny podcast where they interview celebrities and they basically sit around and talk about being famous. And I'm all for that, especially when it's like people that I like.
Right? Especially.
And I'm listening to this podcast.
That's a pretty good one.
It's fun, and it's it's a good podcast.
I think it's funny, yeah.
And it's the three people that host the podcast are famous actors. And
what are their names? I'm sorry.
And they bring on famous actors, right?
Uh-huh.
And then they have a shit ton of fucking commercials on their podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you really need that money, Will Arnett? Like, you seriously need the cash that you're getting? There's no judgment, but then I'm also really judging.
Really judgy? No judgment while I judge.
Everybody gets to do what they do, right?
Yeah.
But the idea is like you can't just show up and do a podcast for the sake of just showing up and spending time with the people that you love and care about and getting to talk to your friends. You have to then run an ad for AutoZone.
Get in the zone.
Right?
Maybe that's to help people get hyped up for the episode. Maybe
And
it's
I'm
a
just
subconscious thing. Get in the zone.
Suddenly the podcast only purpose is ad revenue. That's the only purpose of the podcast is
see that.
Give, that's what TV is, right?
Mm-hmm.
TV is only to run commercials. So it becomes seriously, get over it.
Yeah.
You can't show up and do this and they're like, well, it's to help offset the fuck off. It's help to offset the cost of running the fucking podcast.
I would like some help offsetting the cost of running this podcast.
Yeah, this podcast does not cost us a lot to update or to maintain right. Now, if we wanted to implement an entire team and a production crew, then we might need to run some ads. But those motherfuckers are doing those podcasts in their houses, on Zoom. They're not in some studio. They're not they're just recording it on Zoom.
Why are you so mad about it?
I am a little worked up. We need to move on.
Do you want to dive into this trigger?
I definitely don't, because it's not
And
important.
why it's triggering you? I mean, it obviously is. It's
not.
something.
No, it's the part of it I'll tell you what the part of it is that's triggering.
Let's hear
me.
this.
Okay?
I'm
I
ready.
guess we're diving into it.
We're diving in. Let's do it.
What triggers this? Why this triggers me is because it sparks inside of me this the people that say one thing and do another, right? What is that called? When they're two-faced in a sense, right? Where they present something up front and then they turn around and do something else.
It's hitting that trust, that violation. Yeah.
And I hate that.
Yeah.
I have a lot of that in my past. And I remember very well growing up where you would see, you would take somebody on what they face value, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'd be like, oh, this is that type of person. And you assess that person. Then you're like, cool, I understand that person. They feel like a good person to me. And then they do something that is completely counter to what they're saying or what they preach or what they talk about, right? So then it creates just super inner turmoil of I can't trust that person is fault, they're not safe, all those kind of different things. So it definitely sparks that thing inside of me where I'm like, that doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right to speak about that type of dynamic, right? Where we're in this consumerist, capital, just go, spend more money, latest and greatest, newest iPhone, and then talk about things from this different perspective where we're supposed to get away from that, but then you're selling that. And I just hate it. It just really drives me nuts, but I want to move on.
Okay.
Because it's not something it was just something that I wanted to talk about on the podcast, but we have an important episode. We have something that we actually want to.
Your feelings are important too.
My feelings are important.
What came up is very important.
Yes. And again, we can move on.
Thank you, Sean Hayes, for. You're wearing my ring.
I was wondering how long it would take you to notice that. I love it. Yeah.
Aww. Is that so you can feel close to me, or does that have nothing to do with me?
No, I like it. Of course, it has something to do with you.
Well,
It's
I
your
just
ring.
sometimes I
Didn't find this outside and thought, oh, I'll put
No,
this
it's
on.
just like one of those things where sometimes it's like, I'm like, oh, this is a sentimental moment. And I'm like, oh, wow, we're so connected right now. And you're like, this had nothing to do with it. And I'm just like, and I feel silly. So I was just checking myself quickly before I assumed that it had anything to do with me. I still really like it. It looks good on you.
Thank you. Okay.
Is it your ring now?
No,
It looks good.
that's your ring.
I think maybe it should be our ring. I like it on you. I'm willing to share.
We don't need to split custody of this ring. It's yours.
Jeez, that was pretty fuck. I'm like living the cohabitat, not like
Cohabit.
Jesus. Okay. Trigger.
Pet peeves.
Pet peeves.
This episode's pet peeves. We're diving into pet peeves.
Does your partner take your rings and not ask? That's not a pet peeve. I really like that you did that. I was just trying to be funny there. But don't misinterpret.
Not at all. So give some context to what we're going to get into today.
Okay. So give some context. Okay, I'm ready. So you know all those cute little things that your partner does? They're just so cute. They're just so cute.
Cute as a button.
Right? And here's the thing. I mean, maybe if you didn't think it was cute, maybe you were like, oh, that's a little weird, but it didn't really bother you. It's so cute. It's okay. They're cute, even if that's not cute. And then over time, it stops being as cute. Pretty soon you're like, this is really fucking annoying. Like what? Like these things that you loved about them, or it was not hard to tolerate, are now just like these little things that are under your skin and that are coming up in different ways. And you're either like pushing through emotionally and not dealing with and trying to not draw attention to, or you're just like packing it in the resentment jar. You're like, there's another one. There's another one. So it kind of hits in just that way, these little things that drive you crazy. Like,
should we share some of ours?
Should we share? I was going to say, I have a list.
Let's hear them.
Well, I wasn't like, this isn't a list of things that Craig does. Like these are a list of things that I was like, so I could pull from, because honestly, it's going to be so hard to come up with them because Craig is so perfect. Who's got their bullshit meters on?
So yeah, just some examples.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously
like,
we know what pet peeves are.
Yeah. But. Like, do they squeeze the toothpaste from the middle of the tube or leave the lid off of it all the time?
There's actually one about toothpaste.
There is one about toothpaste.
In our bathroom, we have a little kind of medicine cabinet thingy, right? And that's where we keep our toothpaste. And you keep the toothpaste standing up. So when you get done with it, because it's the kind that's got a cap that it can stand upright, you stand that toothpaste up. Now, what that creates inside of me is all sorts of stress and frustration because
structure and order is hard. I get it.
It's not structure and order, okay? What it is the cubby hole where this toothpaste is stored is this tiny little hole. And I have to get like my big man bear paw into this little hole to get the toothpaste. And when that happens, I'm going to knock the toothpaste over and that's going to fall down.
Are you just going in like...
This is what goes through my head, okay?
I'm loving this
and
conversation.
So in order to avoid the toothpaste from tipping over and catastrophe happening, right? Mind you, there's nothing for it to like fall on. It's not like it falls on the china that we store on the countertop of the bathroom. But instead of like all of that stress and chaos, I lay it down. So then it's easy for me to just slide it off. Do
you lay it down and then take it out?
I don't lay it down and then take it out.
Okay.
When I get done using it, I lay it down.
You lay it down? Yes.
And then when I come back to use it the next day, that motherfucking thing is stood upright. And I know that there's not fairies in our house moving around and standing up, tipping our toothpaste upright. So that's an example of something that we have to, like, that's the struggle in our house right now.
Is it? Oh my gosh. Do you know what? I didn't even like notice that you were always laying it down.
Are you sure?
It's not one of those things. That's just how I put it away. It's not one of those things that are like, okay, toothpaste goes like this.
Really?
Yeah. So
in
it's
my
easy.
Head.
So I'm just going to lay it down. It's not a big deal. I'm just going to try and retrain my brain to... Because when it's the kind that has the screw cap instead of the pop cap.
You can't set it up.
Yeah. And I just lay them down. So I'm just going to like implement that is a stressor for you. I don't have to understand it. It doesn't bother me.
Right. It's the other thing too, where like it's the same concept or the same pet peeve of mine where if stuff is close to the edge, like on the counter or on the table or something
set
like
things
that.
not on the edge.
Right?
That's my
Because
brain's like, it goes on the half
as
off
I'm
of
like
the edge.
moving
Off
and
I
walking
go.
around throughout our house, I'm knocking everything off. And so I have to be like super conscious
How
of like,
clumsy. I'm the clumsy
it
one.
has nothing to do with clumsiness.
You're
It's
like
just like,
disgraceful.
like I need to be able to spread my arms out wide and
Where
spin
you
in a circle
walking?
and not touch anything or knock anything off. And if I do,
Baby.
then there's trouble.
I know. I don't mean to set stuff on the edge.
And yet you still do somehow.
It's like, I can't not. I don't know what it is. I don't even realize I'm doing it until like I come across it or you're like, what are you doing? It's balancing on the corner of the counter. I'm like,
Yeah.
My brain said, it's there. Walk away. I
got,
would like to say I could fix that one like the toothpaste. I don't know how to fix that one. That
I got
one's
more.
just kind of, you got more?
I
Well,
got more.
all right.
The coffee pot, right?
What's wrong with the coffee pot?
You get done with whatever you're using to stir your coffee and you set it on top of the coffee pot.
Yeah.
And then fast forward into the future where I need to make coffee. I have to open up the lid of the coffee pot and that spoon or fork is there.
Why, it can go right in the sink after.
Exactly.
So I should get a new spoon every time.
hold
I
on.
have more than one cup of coffee a day. You want me
Hold
to
on.
use double spoons?
Slow your roll. What did you just say?
I said it can go in the sink.
right after. That would be a perfect spot for it.
So I do
That's
the
actually
dishes.
a great spot for dirty
So
dishes.
it's not
is
dirty
right in
when
the
I'm
sink.
going to stir black coffee with it again.
What are you doing stirring black coffee,
I
Stephanie?
put fiber in it because I'm in my fucking 40s and I need fiber in my coffee.
Okay.
So I stir it.
Let's take a deep breath.
No, hold up, Mr.
Let's
Man.
move on, actually. Back to consumerism.
You're telling me that while you're man walking and going around and needing to move your arms, stuff being out of your way, that you can't see the spoon that I set up there because I'm an inconsiderate person. And it's just going to like cause all the havoc to like, I can't put water in the coffee pot now because there's a spoon on the lid. So you can see how pet peeves can start to build resentments because apparently Craig has a few.
Just me, though.
Okay.
Do you have any?
Do I have any?
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Let me hear some. It's safe. You're in a safe place. This is a safe podcast studio.
So we are a bunch of hairy mofos up in this house.
Fucking Sasquatches.
We are Sasquatchy. We are hairlicious. We are hairy and all the hairies.
You know what's funny though? Like
what?
people that are listening that maybe like we're not hairy. We just have a lot of hair on our heads. We both have long hair.
Yeah, we have a long hair.
Like long, thick hair.
And it's just like curly and like does its thing and all over.
I don't have like some big hairy back. I'm not,
Well, you're the one that said Sasquatch.
Yeah, that's true. Go ahead. So we're hairy.
So we have a lot of head hair. We have hairy heads.
Yes.
Anyways, you are so wonderful in all of your ways, but you like when you comb your hair with your fingers, which we all do, right? Especially with curly hair, and that just goes everywhere because that's how you make it not frizzy. Just kidding. Anyone who has curly hair knows that that's. Anyways, moving on. And like, because humans shed, they just shed. Also, you do a lot of jujitsu, which means you're doing a lot of rolling around on mats and with other people and headlocks and all that. So your hair, comes out occasionally. And you go around and you brush your hair and you run your fingers through your hair and you have hair come out on your fingers, down your hand. And some people take it and throw it in the garbage. And some people go and just drop it wherever they may be. Little hair poofs everywhere.
Sons of bitches. That's who does that.
Sometimes I can go to do the dishes and there's a poof of hair in the sink and I'm like, what the fuck? What the actual fuck? I didn't realize how bad it was until our Roomba stopped working and I flipped her over and she was like into like, what is the word? I'm trying to like, when you tie up a bondism. What's help me think? I can't think.
She was into bondage.
She was tied up and just
she was all sorts of twisted.
She was strapped, tapped, twisted, could not move at all. And I was like, wow, and then when I finally took the hair out, like granted some of it was mine. I know my hair does too, but I don't walk around and being like, I'll save that for later. Who wants to find my treasures everywhere?
I definitely do that.
Everywhere.
And that's probably one that I'm going to
Everywhere.
keep doing.
Probably it is.
Because it's subconscious.
Is it? Because
Yeah.
you like look at it and then sometimes you show me as
Trust
you
me.
drop it.
It's not one that I do consciously.
Like, good job. You just like, or toothpicks.
Toothpicks, that's another one.
Everywhere.
Is that a pet peeve though?
Is it a pet
Or is it just
peeve?
cute? Maybe that one's cute.
I don't know. The only time your toothpicks bother me, and it's not that you have toothpicks, it's that you'll take them out and like toss them and like toss them on the counter, or you put one in your mouth right now, or like toss them on the coffee table. And sometimes they land and sometimes they don't. And what you usually do when they hit the floor is you go, like it registers. And it depends. Some days I'm like, whatever, I'll just go pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
And other days I'm like, motherfucker, like pick up your goddamn toothpick. So it kind of hits. So there's a few, but we can stop at that. So you all
Hold on,
know.
I have one more.
You have one more? This is just going to be us like
We're not
off-gassing. Him
Okay.
and I are like, this is passive-aggressive in action. Watch
So,
us
You know when
be
you have
passive-aggressive.
an empty cereal box that needs to go in the garbage
Yeah, Craig, do you?
or whatever, right? Basically,
He's about to call
packaging-
himself out right
packaging
now.
that needs to go in the garbage.
Instead of back
And
in the fridge.
The best way to destroy or to dispose of that garbage is to place the empty box directly next to the garbage can,
Save-
not inside of it. Hold on, just directly next to it.
We used to have recycle.
So then that way it can join all of its other friends that are already on the floor right next to the garbage can, building another community of empty
then
boxes.
it doesn't take up all the space in the garbage bag. We used to recycle and we don't have a recycle out here in
Because
Tennessee because Tennessee
these-
doesn't recycle.
These packages here in Tennessee are incredibly difficult to fold up and break down.
I break them down. Go look in the
Like,
garbage
you
right
can't
now.
Rip the cardboard here and break.
I'm about to go in the garbage and come out and dump the cardboard of the boxes that I rip up and put there.
You won't be able to find any of yours.
I
because
guarantee.
all of it will be the ones that I've done.
I was doing them this morning. I guarantee you. I can tell you the box that is on top.
Well,
It
let's
is
push
the
pause.
Special K brown cinnamon sugar
Let's go get
breakfast
all
bars.
the garbage out and spread
And
it
that
out
is
on
the one that is
table.
on top because that is the last one that I did.
So that's a really cute.
Me did.
All of these are really cute. Like they
I'm not
do-
feeling he's very cute right now.
Well, let's get into it because this
Okay.
is our beautiful examples of all. And we've been together for 100 years now. And-
Arguing like an old.
Did you turn on the?
Oh, I did. It's the
I know,
wires.
We've got good wiring in this room. Anyways,
The toilet paper I have let go.
in
On
what
which way they fold, which way the.
It's because I gave in. Like it goes the way
Well,
that you
I gave
want
in too,
it, right?
and when we had multiple bathrooms, when we each had our own bathroom, remember those
Right.
days?
You could have your own bathroom the way
Right.
that you wanted it.
And
now
you could
to
have
share.
yours, and
You have to share with this hairy motherfucking Sasquatch
Oh,
that just is dropping toothpicks
no.
everywhere.
Hey, you can't do that.
I'm just teasing.
I think you're wonderful.
I think you're wonderful too. Let's get into pet. So these are pet peeves. We are all familiar with them.
Are your feelings hurt? Because
Not at all.
you started this, Mister. Like
My
you said,
feelings
it
are
was
not
a
hurt.
safe environment.
My feelings aren't hurt at all.
Because I want to address it if it is.
I'm fine.
Okay.
I want to talk about why
Okay.
we're talking about these.
Thermostat wars.
They're what?
Thermostat wars.
Missed out wars?
Am I saying it wrong?
Oh,
Thermostat
thermostat wars.
wars.
Okay. So now you're listing off other examples.
That's what I thought you were going to. What are we going to?
We're going to talk about now why, like what happened. Like these pet peeves are funny and silly, right?
Sometimes they can start some fights.
So we just talked about it.
Sometimes, honestly, these things, like we're having fun, but they can actually cause divorces.
Yeah.
Like they become the thing that so much resentment builds, so much like animosity, and it turns to like this internal rage. Like when this person does it, you hate it.
That's why we
and
got
you
to
start
get
to
into it.
develop hate for them, and it
Exactly.
can really destroy things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to go deeper into all of your little pet peeves and what they're
Yeah.
actually stemming from and what they're connected to.
Yeah.
Right. So let's share. We had some other ones too.
Did we?
Yeah. Before we get into it, shout out to.
Oh, yeah. Wait. Did the person say we could use their name?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't see that.
No, I made sure.
You made sure?
Yeah.
I thought you said just ask if we could share them, not use their name.
I did. I clarified.
Okay. Well then,
Either
shout
way.
out.
Yeah. See, now you got me all. Anyways,
I don't want to like.
There's some other ones that came in.
Are you sure?
just relax.
I don't.
Everything's okay. Calm down, Steph.
I don't want to make this mistake.
So let's see. Somebody shared, I don't know. Sorry, I'm having a hard time reading this. I don't know answer to almost all questions or even the middle of the conversation. So their partner just responds with, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. What?
Even in the middle of the conversation just starts, I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay.
This person we know that we can share. It's Heavenly. She's a good friend of ours. Shout out to Heavenly. So her partner is slow, right? Just slow with everything, and that gets on her nerves.
And she's not saying like slow. She's like takes his time or takes their time.
Takes sweet ass time, right?
Yeah, just like
scraping,
not in a rush.
Scraping the fork on a plate. Like there's so many auditory things.
Yeah, that drives me crazy.
That are big deals, right?
I'm with you there. That sound is like.
She says he bobs his foot or his leg, like bounces his knee up and down constantly. That gets to her. His phone usage, so definitely too much time on his phone sometimes. I'm a wiggler
too, so I'm like, how annoying is my wiggle? Like even right now on the podcast, I'm sitting here, I can't sit still. I notice that like the camera is there, and I just look like this weirdo that's always moving in the chair. But if you put me in a swivel chair, I can't not swivel. Okay. And the legs going. So on like one of them, I'm with you. I feel you on, and the next one, I'm like, God, I'm the annoying bobbly one.
You guys always, when I say you guys, you and our son, they always get upset at the way that I chew. Like my chewing definitely bothers you guys at some times.
No. It's just.
Yes.
It's not your chewing.
It's just the chewing in general. People.
No. Loud chewing is really hard.
Yeah.
For him and I both have that. But it's not people thing, because if it's quiet and I can hear myself chewing, I can't do that. It's terrible. So it's not that, oh, Craig chews weird. Craig chews loud. It's like, I don't want to hear anybody chew. And there's a name for that. We're not just weird. That's a name for that. Common one.
I can't remember what it's called though.
Me neither.
The only thing that was coming to mind was like audio asphyxiation or something.
Sir chews loud a lot.
But that's definitely not it. Anyways, we're getting all squirreled all over the place because this is fun teasing each other with our pet peeves. And it's like, it gets to be fun.
Toilet seat up. You are so good about putting the toilet seat down.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, I think it's awesome too, because you used to live in a house it was like you and Asher against the girls. It was overrun with girls. So it made sense that you guys were always putting the toilet seats down. And now I am the lone survivor here.
Right.
It is just my femininity and I. Like, and you still put the toilet seats down. And don't think I don't notice. I appreciate that.
Okay.
That's a big one.
Pet peeves can lead to divorce.
Pet peeves can lead to divorce.
That's the name of this episode.
Right? They totally can, and it's sad.
Before we get into kind of the underlying, not situations, but the underlying issues that these pet peeves are connected to, we'll talk about the ones that we shared, and then also just kind of general things that people can extrapolate from their own pet peeves. There is the big, huge caveat that oftentimes some of them, especially the ones that are like auditory issues with scraping or chalkboard or the sounds of people chewing, some of that just comes from like neurodivergency and kind of being on the spectrum at times. So it's not necessarily that none of these things are your partner doing anything wrong, right? They're just living their life, being themselves to a certain extent. But some of these issues are definitely more connected to what would you describe that? Like your own
nervous system, your own regulation.
Yeah. It's less of like this externalized thing of anger and frustration that you're using to highlight deeper anger or a deeper boundary or something like that.
Deeper resentment, agitation. And it's like the thing too is like you can look at these if you just take a second to examine your pet peeves and the things that drive you crazy. There are times that they aggravate you more than others.
That's the other big thing.
Yeah. The difference is where you are in your body, your emotional well-being at that point. And like Heavenly mentioned that as well. She's like, she has that awareness is that when she's more activated, these things are an issue as to compared to when she's not.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, so just having that awareness too, you're like, oh, this thing bothered me yesterday, but today it's cute. And then tomorrow I am calling a lawyer.
It's completely different.
You know what? We are done.
So like that dynamic right there where it's more connected to like, am I tired? Am I upset already? Am I hungry? It's more connected to what I'm actually
What
experiencing.
emotional state you were in that moment,
Right.
what you have just dealt with.
That tells us exactly, like that tells us everything that we need to know.
Right. It's,
That the pet peeve is really about your
Yeah.
own internal nervous system and your own like emotional state of what you're feeling and what you're processing. It has nothing to do with your partner or anything to. Now, of course, there's things that your partner does that should probably change, and that, you know, like I should definitely probably pick up my hair and not just throw it all over the floor. However,
if I came to you and said, Craig, like there's a difference here between things that need to change in a relationship and things that you just need to like really work with yourself on. If you were being unhealthy, hurtful, harmful in our relationship, then that would definitely be something that you needed to change, not me. I just need to be okay with you being hurtful, harmful, all of that. But this, we'll just like use this as an example as where like that drives me crazy, right? Does that hurt our relationship?
it doesn't, but that's like, that's a choice, right?
It is a choice. It is a choice. But the point that I'm getting to, I'm not saying just allow it, is if this was something that even though it is not hurting our relationship and it is not something that you were being like hurtful, harmful, hateful, any of those things, but it got to me to a point where it was like, Craig, like I feel like this is inconsiderate that I am just expected to clean this up. I would really like, I would appreciate if you would pick up your hair. I would appreciate if you went through it on the ground. It would help me feel validated and that the time that I put into things matter. If you wouldn't just leave it all over for me to pick up. And I would like it if you would bring attention to this. If I said that to you, like just even using this as an example, I feel like you're going to stop doing that. You know, you're just going to start picking it up.
Trust
now.
me, I'm not.
You're not? Okay, well, that shows you. I stand corrected.
I'm still going to throw my hair everywhere.
Okay. Anyways, I'm upset the fact that I was wrong about my opinion of you right there. That I thought, oh, you're going to immediately fix this. And I was going to tell you it was okay. And you're like, no, I'm not. Okay. That became a real pet peeve. As opposed to the hair, I'm like, you didn't just validate my response of what I thought your reaction was going to be. I had an expectation, buddy. You didn't meet that expectation. See, whose work is that? Is it yours? Nope. That'd be my work. Anyways, I feel if I came to you and said those things genuinely, that you would hear that. And then your response wouldn't be, well, I'm not going to pick up my own hair. I'm just going to leave it everywhere. I don't think that would be your response. Yeah. Maybe even you would compromise of like once a week, I'm going to vacuum, I'm going to mop, or I'm going to sweep, I'm going to go through and do a hair sweep. You know, I think you would meet me somewhere.
Of course.
So like there's kind of that difference there.
Of being able to communicate one of those,
Of being able to communicate it. And then also just like how you were saying, like when there's things that need to be changed, a conversation comes into play. And it's not, I'm expecting you to change because you are driving me crazy. Because that sentence has nothing to do with me or has nothing to do with you. It's all about me.
Yeah.
As to where, hey, this thing is making me feel unseen, unloved, whatever we're going to come with. And I would, like, I don't want to feel this way. And is there something that we can do to work on this together? Which is kind of a different thing. Okay, sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It's good. Right?
I also, I lost my train of thought. I got activated and I forgot where we were going, and I was waiting for it to come back and it didn't.
So sometimes they're just your own little neural quirks that you have to kind of deal with and communicate. And the other, like when it's one of those issues, what's really beneficial is communicating that that's one of your issues or that's one of your triggers.
Yes.
Like today we were hanging out in our house and Steph opened up the windows because all the fresh air comes in. And for whatever reason, every single car that drove past our house sounded like it was like driving inside of my ear. Just the sound of movement outside the house was driving me insane. It was really, really difficult for me to kind of focus on anything else. And I tried to be okay with it for a minute, and eventually it was just too much. And so we had to close the windows. And that was like in opposition to what you wanted. You wanted more time with the windows open and fresh air because you're cleaning out the house of whatever. And I don't mean to minimize it, but
you totally been.
but But that was a compromise where you realized that that was some sort of auditory issue that I was having in the moment. So when there's things like that, that are more about kind of your, whether it's your neurodiversiveness or your little quirks that you just have for yourself, being able to communicate those and know those for each other is going to help immensely, because then they can just have compassion in the moment, right? It's not like we can never open windows again.
Right.
It was
So now I'm
just
shut.
in the moment, it was really getting to me. So that's really helpful when it comes to those kind of things, right?
And having that communication, having that like understanding, also being able to experience that myself with auditory comes like I had no, like that was like an immediate, oh yeah, that's fine. Let's just shut the windows.
Yeah. And then there's also other ones like these silly ones that we're talking about with toothpaste or toilet seats or hair all over the house or all these little silly ones also that we talk about. There's a dynamic of you just have to learn how to live with people. Like you have to balance the need for autonomy and the need for connection and be able to make compromises and realize that your partner, if you like, what do you want? Do you want your partner to live in a house or live in a place where they don't feel like they can be themselves so that they can really settle in and be at home and be comfortable in their space because they're too worried about picking up after themselves? Or like, we all know what it's like when you go over to somebody's house and you feel like you can't even sit on the couch, right? Nobody wants to live like that 24/7.
Yeah, so I don't want to live in a house where you feel like you don't want to sit on the couch.
Right.
You know,
We've
so
all been
like
in
finding
those
those
houses.
balances too. It's like a different, like that brings up too, you're saying like different values that you have on that.
Yeah. So you have to kind of work those out in your relationship where, okay, these are just little quirky things that they do and they're going to get on my nerves sometimes, especially when I'm tired or I'm hangry or whatever the case is. And that's okay. We can laugh about them. We can joke about them. If it begins to, like, if we start to take them really personally and they really start to hurt us emotionally or make us sad or whatever the case is, then we need to be able to communicate that, right?
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, like if suddenly my lack of picking up my hair was making you feel like I didn't really value and care about how much work you invest and put into kind of taking care of our house and everything like that, then of course I would want to know that.
Yeah.
I would want that communicated so then immediately I could make some changes, right? Otherwise, it just gets to be a silly thing that we kind of tolerate with each other.
Right.
And
it's not something that I need to control either.
Right.
Like it comes down to a lot of these things. There's like control of when I'm unregulated, when I'm dysregulated, I don't feel like I have control in my space. I then get very agitated at the space around me and I want to control my environment. And a part of your environment is the people that are in it. So when you're agitated, you find yourself nitpicking and criticizing and trying to control the people around you. And then their whole personality and behaviors turns into a pet peeve that you then get to excuse and dismiss as it's just a pet peeve or whatever. They do this. And it just kind of turns into that really unhealthy blaming, and it can get quite toxic with those because they're not behaving in a way that you want them to behave in so that they don't agitate you. And that's not healthy.
yeah,
Like nobody wants to, like just try and imagine that for a minute. So many people are going to be like, yeah, I relate. That's how I live. I feel like I'm on eggshells all the time. I feel like anything that I do is annoying. Like nobody wants to live that way. And it's really hard when not only do we have to live that way, but when we have that own trauma base inside of us where we think we have to live that way and we already deem that everything we do is weird, you know? It's this whole thing that goes back and forth. So really check in yourself on the amount of control that you feel like you need to have over somebody else in order for you to feel safe.
yeah.
And that's something to dive into.
That's something to get really curious about.
Because that's the clue right there. You get to start to look in and what's going on, what inner part of you needs to be seen, what inner part of you is saying, hey, like this is a behavior, this is a survival technique, this is something that is coming out to keep me safe in this moment. So what part of you doesn't feel safe? What part of you was not safe that can be looked at now, that can be healed now from a safe place?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the other part of all of these little pet peeves and everything. Sometimes they're the ones that are just your own little nervous system. Sometimes they're the things that we have to make do with when we're living with people. That's like, don't get us started on kids. Like there's a whole other episode of our kids and
there's not
pet peeves of our children.
Children are perfect.
How they chose to exist in our house. But they, but then there's also this other layer.
So many different personalities in our house.
There's this other layer where the pet peeve is really sparking the thing inside of you that needs to be healed. Mm-hmm. It's coming from a place that is a much deeper wound. Those are the ones that evoke like really strong emotional responses inside of you every time they come up, where it almost becomes like, oh my God, this, like you're full of anger and rage suddenly because of this little tiny thing that's happening. And even though it's like, well, this thing keeps happening over and over and over and over again, that keeps happening over and over and over again because it's just addressing a wound that you're not looking at and that you're not dealing with and that you're not facing. And until you actually go back to the beginning of it and see where it was actually formed, it might be something that, you know, we're always talking about inner child work and going back into your past. And it definitely has to do with your parents and your childhood and your upbringing. And those things are always applicable, yes. But it also can be something just within the scope of your relationship. It can be something that happened, you know, in the first year of dating or something like that, that is really maybe traumatic or difficult, or it was an emotional wound for you that was never addressed and kind of got swept under the rug, or maybe your partner was oblivious to. And over the years, it's just festered inside of you and created this really toxic energy and all the passiveness of having to like bury that thing over and over and over again. It's just really hard to deal with those. So if it's one of those, and we can all, like you and I both have those. I don't want to get lost in talking about those ones, but
it finds a way to express itself. When you haven't been able to express this pain, this hurt, this thing, it will come out. Past behavior that is no longer applicable, stopped behavior does not mean healed. It does not mean that this isn't something that no longer bothers you. If you have not looked at it, dealt with it, faced it, felt through it, it's going to come up and it's going to resurface and come out in these pet peeve ways. Like, I can't get mad at you for this, but I'm like, this is happening. I can unleash all this feelings down. It gets a voice. I'm going to express it right here. And it has nothing to do with that.
Also, we're talking about these things in a playful, silly way because the vast majority of these pet peeves are kind of that, right? Where they just get to be these silly things. And truthfully, these other ones that go into the deeper layer of stuff, that's where we're really getting into like shadow. And the beautiful part of relationships is that's going to spark. Like the unhealed parts in me are going to get triggered and sparked by you. And vice versa, right? Where I'm going to trigger and spark the unhealed things inside of you as well. So that's the whole purpose and design of relationship, is to bring those things forth so that they can be healed. Yeah.
And that's not saying to take it out on each other and to dump it all over each other. That's not what we're communicating, but we bring it to the surface and see and witness with each other and heal. And oftentimes it does come from dumping it all over the other person first, because
usually you have to practice.
We are works in progress.
Making it really messy before you can kind of go through it in a clean, connected, communicative, safe way.
Or at least we did. Maybe other people out there are catching it ahead of time, but we're we definitely.
Most people don't, right? We're just not taught to deal with stuff.
Like, did it all wrong.
We're not taught to deal with all of these things. And you're going to have, it's so funny, like the more we explored this and the more that we started talking about it, is not only on the episode, but leading up to this and stuff. It's so funny. Like you, I think you mentioned it earlier, but there's ones that are programmed like, oh, I'm supposed to be annoyed by this behavior because you're basing it off of what you saw growing up, or even like in society, this is I'm
supposed to be upset by this.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be upset, or this is a common thing that, you know, couples deal with, and I'm supposed to be annoyed or triggered or upset by this thing. So,
and that was wasn't on the podcast. We spoke about that earlier. I hadn't mentioned that yet on the podcast, so I'm glad you brought it up.
I'll elaborate on it.
Like the only thing that's coming to my head is like farts, right? Hear me out. I'm like,
that's you, babe. You're always thinking about farts,
right? It's like my mom farts were infuriating. You didn't fart. You had to be embarrassed by it. You hid it. It was shameful. And if somebody farted around you, it was punishable. Like farts were like a
See?
disgrace. How dare you fart around me? And like there's a single I won't go too deep in the weeds here. But for a while it was like the same, right? I was like, I still have, I'll just say it, I still get embarrassed and try and hide my farts. I'm not walking around being like, hey, what up, Toot? You know, we've been married how long? And I'm like, I run to the bathroom a lot of times. You know, sometimes I don't, and I hope you can't hear it or anything else.
My favorite is when you're like in the other room and you're like, nothing. You didn't hear anything. You're right, babe. I didn't hear anything.
Sometimes I don't have like dead run, like sprint farts. But it was like I used to, when people would fart, like you had to be mad about it.
Right.
And how dare you? Like that is so inconsiderate of you to fart. No, that's a bodily function. Like if I came up and farted on your face, and yeah, that's inconsiderate. But to like have a bodily function happen, you know, that's not an insult to you as a person. You know, so that is a learned behavior. And that is one that I've unlearned. You know, I don't like to be farted on. I think if we're having a deep conversation sometimes and one just like gets ripped, you know, maybe there's a thing there.
It's so rude. I can't believe that happens.
Right.
Sometimes.
Well, I don't know who's doing that
Whoever
out there.
that person is.
But I also like farts
terrible.
happen. Farts are not shameful.
Right.
You don't have to like feel shame or use farts as a weapon, because guys definitely use farts as a weapon sometimes. I have been weaponized by many a farters. So that's like the first one, what like a learned behavior of a pet peeve on what. And I'm sure there's others out there, but my brain was like Rain Man. I'm like, uh-oh, fart. That's all I could think of.
That makes me, so that's a good example. Burping is one for me.
Yeah.
That I hadn't thought about, but growing up, it was very much like you don't burp at the table. And if you do burp, like you have to say, excuse me. It has to be like this whole thing where, you know, you minimize the burp and the sound and you apologize for burping. So I was brought up that way and trained that way. So by all means, like that's a massive sign of disrespect.
Right.
And then when you and I get together, and I love our kids, but I mean, those little motherfuckers just rip these long ass burps, like sitting there at the table.
The loudest burps you've ever heard. Like they are
and
burp
I'm just
champions.
like, what in the hell is going on here?
But you'll fart. Like farts happen at the table and it's not like you're
Wasn't
fine.
a big deal.
So the burps I was okay with, except for a certain pitch. When it hit too loud, the volume, then I was like,
right?
How dare you?
So we see where these burp and fart obsessions are that come from our childhood.
Mm-hmm.
So we've mastered that shadow. Right.
So that's just like, maybe you can think of other learned behaviors on what is unacceptable behaviors from others that are not quite the disastrous show of disrespect or any kind of thing that
it might be a programmed response and or belief
Yeah.
that you actually don't believe anymore.
Yeah.
And that isn't that big of a deal.
Right. And if that is your truth still, and if you're like, I absolutely like have a massive issue with that,
great.
you're not wrong. Like
Right.
you get to like what you feel is valid. And we just encourage you to take a dive in. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. By saying somebody else isn't wrong, that doesn't automatically mean that you are wrong.
Yeah.
Like you're both were right in that spot. And
So
both
often.
of you have things that you could look at, you know?
So after we get done, is there anything else before we wrap and go to the Q&A session of this episode, or the segment of this episode?
Just kind of like a little fun spin on it. So when we're like seeing these pet peeves and seeing them coming up and understanding that they're just from different perspectives and maybe some learned behavior or trauma that's coming out, or some resentment.
No, go ahead.
What?
My ADD is like, I have something to say. Go ahead, finish.
Well, I was going to move on to like another form of what it can look like on a healthy form is like you have a healthy expression of kind of this energy, this like off-gassing, which is a healthy like bonding energy. So pet peeves are disengaging, and like cute little quirky behaviors are an engaging tactic. And so I was just going to go into some healthy expression and how healthy expression, okay. So some things that you can do on this is when you're recognizing a lot of pet peeves are coming up, not only are they the core issues, but there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect happening. So working on trying to regain that connection. And there's so many different ways, so many things you can do. So like the conversation, the quality time, going through, but honestly, just a little bit of play and some healthy, unique things that are just unique to you and your partner build connection, bonding, and trust, which help to mitigate and kind of, it's not take the place of, but take up more space, use more space, and allow less space for pet peeves.
Mm-hmm.
So like cute little nicknames and not hurtful, not using the passive aggressive stuff, like, oh, you cute little idiot. That's not nice. Don't say that. But cute nicknames that you have for each other. Shit ass. Right. And so just like inside jokes, little cute little phrases, just the two of you, maybe little rituals that are just reserved for the two of you. So when you have these and you bring attention to them, that they are actually like healthy expressions and bonding, and you allow them to build and do more, you see them are like, oh, let's have more fun of this. This is play. This builds intimacy and connection. So bringing some of those in. And if you catch yourself in these, just like take a moment to acknowledge the fact that like that's a really cool thing that you have in your relationship. That's a cool thing. That's a special thing. And that gets to be celebrated and honored.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Also, before we wrap on this wonderful episode about pet peeves, it's not a sign that they're not like meant for you. Like if there's a bunch of pet peeves, or if there's a bunch of things that they do that annoy you, it doesn't mean that they aren't necessarily the right one and you need to break up with them or get divorced or whatever, right? It might just be some of these other things that we've talked about. So, and it might be that they're definitely not the right one for you.
Not everybody's a match.
Yeah.
Also, like, don't call, like, just last little caveat, really unhealthy behavior, hurtful, harmful, toxic, abusive. Don't try and label those as pet peeves. That is not.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are other things completely.
Yeah.
Okay. I liked it. It was fun.
I'm glad.
Me too. I don't think any of our pet peeves have changed.
Oh, I'm fixing the toothpaste.
Are you though?
It doesn't, I'm not a toothpaste belongs up person. I'm okay with it.
You know what's funny is in my head, you so were. In my head, it was this battle.
Was I taunting you?
It was this battle that we were having where you're like, by God, I'm going to.
Let that be awareness too. I was oblivious to this.
In my head, you're sitting there saying, lay that fucking toothpaste down again one more time. Do it.
So you were like fighting me.
Lay that toothpaste down one more time, motherfucker. See what happens. The whole time. And then every time I'm just like, fine, I'll put the toothpaste upright. How do you like that? I'm going to like get bloody knuckles trying to reach into this little cubby hole to get this fucking toothpaste that's upright. So go ahead. We'll keep it upright. See if you like it that way.
And
right?
It wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I'll just lay it down. It's not a big deal at all.
And all of that was taking place in my head, guaranteed during times of activation when I'm already.
You come out from brushing your teeth pissed off at me, and I'm like,
because I brush my teeth at night. So I'm tired already. It's at the end of the day. I'm already stressed out. I want to go to bed. And I'm sitting there, just goddamn sons of toothpaste. Right? And you're like, how was it? Did you brush your teeth? And I'm like, I'm going to put the toothpaste somewhere else.
So keep that in mind too. That's a really good awareness. They may not be taunting you with this thing. They may not be even aware that it's an issue.
They're taunting you. She's so good right now. Look at her. She's like, I didn't know.
Not me.
This is crazy.
No, I was never doing that.
I'm going to fix the toothpaste.
I'm over here laughing. Like,
right. You probably have another spot where you have your own toothpaste. And that one was just to fuck with you. Right. You probably have your own private toothpaste that you get to keep in a special drawer. So
if you have this thought pattern going down, this is definitely something that indicates maybe take a look inside yourself and see what's triggering this thing. This is a little more to do with you than the other person.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
So
okay.
At the end of every episode, we answer a question. You can submit those questions to us anytime. It's info@energyislove.love. You can also, if you follow us on social, you can just message us those questions. We love to answer those questions, and then we bring them on the podcast. And if you want your name to be shared, please tell us that. Otherwise,
and tell us more explicitly, because I second guess that apparently.
Yeah, no, like you have to say
Stephanie, use my name.
Feel free to use my name. Here is my question. And this week's question,
There you go. That's the
this
phrase.
week's question comes from somebody who did not articulate it that clearly. And so it's an anonymous question from somebody. So the question is this, okay? Are you ready?
I don't know.
Stephanie, are you ready? I just started a relationship and I'm scared my partner will leave once they find out about my past. What can I do? First off, we can relate.
Right?
Right.
Strongly.
And it's kind of difficult because, like my follow-up question is not what about your past, but is it, your past relationships, are you hiding a big secret? Like, what is it from your past that you're afraid that they're going to find out about? And that would...
Choices made, things that happened to you.
So many different possibilities of what that could be. But
they all feel like shame inside.
Right.
They all feel like your fault, your shame makes you unlovable.
Well, that's the core
is
here.
Not true.
Is shame. So you have shame over your past, whatever it might be, and you're afraid that they're going to find out. So we all experience this at the beginning of relationships where we're basically presenting our best versions, right? Here I am with my A team on, like I've got I'm definitely...
You're just feeling your best too.
You are. It's all that new relationship energy.
It's not necessarily, I'm like, some of it, you definitely have this like hiding factor and I'm never going to share. But honestly, there's a lot of times like you're not even thinking about it because you are so like you're in the bliss. Like you said, that new relationship energy, you are in the bliss, you're in the happy and you're not thinking about it. You don't feel weighed down by it until it starts coming up. And then you're like, oh shit.
Right.
What am I going to do with all that?
The other person is feeling exactly the same way.
Yeah.
So it's something that happens in every relationship. And I think everybody feels it. And we all have fear over what happens if this person actually finds out X, Y, or Z, right? Yeah. There's always something in our past that what if they actually find out this? And that feeling, truthfully, it's not to say it doesn't go away because it goes away and it kind of fades, but there's always going to be something in your past. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was just going to correct you. I don't know why. I'm like, no, like it's going to come up.
That's what I'm saying.
You can't avoid it. It's going to come up or it's going to haunt you until it does. So how do you want to?
Well, what I'm saying is even if you get to the point where you're comfortable enough with your partner to express some of these things and to talk through some of these things, which is the point, right? That's the thing, is to get to that point where you feel safe enough in the relationship to be able to share more and more about yourself. And by doing so, it's going to be your opportunity to actually start healing some of those things sometimes, right? Not always, but sometimes. Now, that's kind of the goal in a sense. That's what you should kind of work towards. And oftentimes remember, they're going to be going through the same process and you kind of share and laugh and experience like the shared journey of, oh my gosh, we were so afraid about this. And really, like the more I learn about you, Steph, the more I just fall in love with you. Even when it's the things that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so ashamed of this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love you so much more. Yeah. So there comes a certain point in the relationship where that can be the result, where it doesn't create distance. And, that doesn't mean the relationship falls apart. It actually brings you closer together. Yeah. It bonds you in a sense and can cultivate a lot of security and safety because now this person knows a part of you that maybe nobody else knows.
Right. And there's another aspect of this too, of allowing, like that is really showing up with them when you let them know about this past. This doesn't mean, on date 2, you're like, here's my trauma list, but kind of. So you don't have to share your deepest secrets when you're just starting to date somebody, but when you're like really building a relationship, to have these conversations like, I'm bringing this to the table and this isn't anything that is wrong with you. This isn't a shame session of where you're like piling it all out and these are all the reasons you are unlovable. And like I did that. I remember that. I remember the phone call and I was like, here we go. Like I'm just going to like shame dump right here because I cannot get any deeper into this. And so I'm going to tell you all the reasons that I'm unlovable. And like you didn't go anywhere. It shocked the hell out of me. But and turns out there was more that I didn't see. But anyways, we're not saying a shame dump. And if you've already done that, like that's okay. Give yourself some love. You're trying to figure out how to do this. But when you're saying I come with this, like this is like I'm gonna like there's like an abandonment wound, there's a self-medication wound, there's like whatever your life story is. Whatever you survived or whatever you did to survive is not something that is shameful, even if you hold shame for it. So when you express to them, like, this is the journey of how I became me. And sometimes this is going to come up in our relationship, and these are going to be things that we'll face together. Like, they're having that often, and they're getting to know you on a level. And that's also going to show how they're going to show up for you. You know, they're like, these are the things that I survived or I learned so I could survive. And this is how it's going to show up in our relationship. And that's a really, really neat and unique thing when you're showing each other that. Also, they might freak out.
Yeah, they might.
They might freak out.
It might be the end of the relationship.
And that's still, even though that will hurt like hell, that doesn't validate a shame that you should feel. That doesn't validate or invalidate you.
Even though this is like a long-standing line that people hear and they don't believe it, if that's the case and the person, you know, breaks up with you because of something that you share with them or something that they find out about your past, that's more about them than it is about you.
Yeah.
And again, like, I know that you're probably like, if you hear that, you're like, no, it's always me. It's always about me. And that's just not reality, right? That thought process comes from the part of you that is ashamed anyways and is looking through that lens and that perspective and seeing the situation from that place. But the truth be told is somebody, especially if it's somebody that, like, you're in this committed relationship, and if you're just in the beginning of a relationship, relax, right? There's plenty of time to let all of that stuff happen naturally. There's no reason to force it. But if it does happen and they do break up or whatever the case may be, it's more about them than you, and you didn't do anything wrong, whether it's in the past when the shame was, you know, developed and kind of grew, or in the present moment either. So
it doesn't mean that they did anything wrong either.
Yeah.
Like, they get to, like, opt in for that. And sometimes when people, like, make those choices, they're like, you're also seeing where you don't align with them. None of that is easy, but it is
part of relationships.
It's a part of relationships.
Yeah, it's going to happen no matter what. So you're going to face it again and again. And we do all the time still. Like, there's still stuff that I'm like, man, I don't, you know, there's always things like that, I think, in relationships where there's parts of us that, you know, we don't want the other person to know about. And I think there's a part of it that's healthy as well, but we're digressing. That was a great question. Thank you.
Yeah.
And as always, you can submit those questions if you can send them to our email. It's info@energyislove.love. You can also go to our website or just direct message us on any social media platform.
Yeah. And if you also want more help navigating that, because every experience is different and what you're going through, like, reach out. And if you, like, there's support systems, there's our group, there's us, but, like, there are support systems all over that are in person, online. Like, don't feel like you have to go through it by yourself, because that just perpetuates the shame that does not belong there anyways. And the more that you, like, and that's not making you wrong, I just heard that, but that shame that you're, like, holding on to and feeling like you are shameful for, the more light you shine on it and the more, like, love you allow in, the more you can release that does not belong in your body.
Beautiful. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us after 6 years and 355 episodes. As always, if you liked this episode, please go subscribe, share, follow, all those things. You can also review the podcast and 5 stars and all those other things that you can do on the platforms. That really helps and benefits. And just enjoy. Thank you so much for being here and for supporting the podcast. We'll see you next week.